Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the West Coast Connection. I am Terrence Holton, and I gotta address the elephant in the room. I thought I wasn't gonna make an episode this week, but ended up having more time than I thought I would. So we're gonna be breaking down a few things in this episode. Talking about the Senior Bowl, which was last week in college football. So best seniors go preparing for the NFL draft. Going to talk a little college basketball. Obviously, this is a college basketball podcast. We're in college basketball season, so jump right into it. Oh, we're also going to talk a little bit about my mock draft, my first mock draft, and kind of the things I stood out. Maybe some opinions. I have some early opinions, pre-combine. I'll probably do one or two more of these where I talk about like my mock drafts. I'll probably do two, three more mock drafts and do some with some guests later on. But let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the Senior Bowl first because Senior Bowl, it was interesting. It's a not a week-long event, it's a few day-long event. Week before the Super Bowl, the best seniors in college football, they all meet together in the Reese's Senior Bowl. It's fun. It's a fun little event. Bunch of players get time. And I'm just going to talk about some of like the biggest risers from that. Some of the guys who really just kind of stood out, maybe impressed on some draft boards. So let's start off with I think it's probably the biggest one who jumped out. It is the defensive end from why am I forgetting it? Marshall, excuse me, Mike Green. This guy had a monster rise in his draft stock, in my opinion. I'm be perfectly honest, hands up, I wasn't familiar with him at all. As well as of what I have read, he was kind of deemed to be a little small for defensive end. He didn't have a long reach, as one would want in a professional defensive end, as a professional defensive lineman. And so he's kind of written off, despite the fact that he had 17 sacks this year for the Thundering Herd. That's pretty ridiculous. One of the best edge rushers in college football this year, but obviously sometimes guys don't translate to the pros. That's what scouts seem to think. Then goes to the Senior Bowl. He's playing against that top talent the most viral clip in my, oh, there's one other, which I'll talk about later. One of the most viral clips from the entire Senior Bowl. He's doing one-on-one rushes. They're doing one-on-one against O lineman and edge rusher. He gets Josh Conerly from Oregon, another great prospect who I have going in the first round, maybe early second, and he just muscles through him. He bullies him straight through the line and gets to the quarterback. Obviously, it's just a drill, but he just runs right through him. And that is really that's why he's rising up. He's starting to gain a lot more attention. As I talked about, right now I have him going 23rd to the Packers. I could realistically, because the edge rusher, it's a good edge rusher, it's a pretty decent edge rusher class, don't get me wrong. But guys like James Pierce Jr., who everyone kind of thought was going to be the number one pick this year going into this season, he kind of dropped off. I could see him falling late first. Guy like Mike Green, though, seeing him, you saw him do it against like the lower talent. Now you see him do it against the good talent, such as guys like Josh Conerly. It's a little impressive. It's pretty impressive. So I could really see him going anywhere. Honestly, anywhere in the first round. I don't think he'll go top 10, maybe not even top 15, but I'd say 15 to 32 is a pretty, like anywhere could take him because at also you get into the points where those are the better teams. They can take a shot on a guy who went to a mid-major, wasn't that proven, but has showed some flashes of being really great. So I kind of think that I wouldn't be surprised if a team like right now I have him going 23rd to the Green Bay Packers. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there. So there's that. Next one, Jack Beck, the wide receiver at TCU. I'm sure most of you know Jack, his brother. Apologize, blanking on his brother's name, but he was killed in the Bourbon Street terrorist attack a few weeks back. Jack comes out TCU, wins Senior Bowl MVP. He had a phenomenal game, had the game-winning touchdown, and it's incredibly emotional for him. It's he's playing great. He's doing all for his brother. It's fantastic. But he had a great week. He played great in the one-on-one drills. He was phenomenal, and he's risen up a lot of draft boards I've seen. I think the one I was looking at, PFF currently has him as the 40 something prospect. I'm kind of forgetting, kind of blanking on that, so I apologize. But he's moving up a lot of draft boards, and that's a lot of because of how he played in the Senior Bowl. Obviously, he had a pretty solid senior year at TCU for the Horned Frogs, but he had a great year, great week, excuse me. Next guy I got, Gray Zabel, another first round guy I got. This guy, I have seen a little bit about this guy for a few weeks now, preceding the Senior Bowl. The offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. Every once in a while, North Dakota State gets these just like behemoths, not on the offensive line, but I mean behemoths as in great draft prospects. Um, and I kind of think he's one of them. Obviously it's another similar situation to Mike Green, where it's a little hard to tell with these guys who play at lower levels, but he was so good for North Dakota State. And then they bring him into the Senior Bowl against these veteran, against these edge rushers who played at a higher level, and he's playing fantastic. That's another guy. He's risen up a lot of draft boards. I see him usually late first, maybe early second, but I would say late first. Get really could go right now. I have him 26th to the Rams. Really beef up that offensive line, but I could see him going a lot of places. I mean, the Commanders would kind of make sense. Chiefs, if he falls that far, that he kind of fits that Chiefs prototypical offensive lineman type guy. He is. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name, but his name's Cody. I can't believe I'm forgetting his last name. Cody, and he plays for the Buccaneers. Another first round pick out of North Dakota State, not that long. Cody Bumgardner? Oh, it's something like that. But another guy who you look at them, they play at North Dakota State. They play at the FCS level, and then they come and play at the Senior Bowl, at all these other like bowl events where they can really improve their draft stock. I mean, we'll see the NFL Combine, but we'll see about him. I think he's going to rise up heavily. So well, I think he'll go first round pick, then in my personal opinion. And then last guy I really kind of wanted to touch on was Oregon's wide receiver, Tez Johnson. He, in my opinion, was a top five, maybe top three receiver in all of college football this year. He was fantastic. The problem is he's 5'9", 160. He's a small guy who you're not really sure if he can translate to college football, the NFL, excuse me. But it's impressive. It's impressive what he's doing. And you saw the videos of like the one-on-one drills, and he's routing up all these like good cornerbacks, these first round, these day two pick corners. He's a great receiver. It's just, his obviously his stature is a bit of an issue. But I think that he's improved his draft stock a lot just by his ability to like get open. We've seen what he can do in open space. He was the best, in my opinion, best open space receiver in all of college football last year, just without a doubt. When you get the ball in his hand, he's gonna make a play. That's why I feel like he could work in the NFL. Because I mean, you look at guys like Tyreek Hill, you get the ball in their hand, they're gonna make a play happen. They're quick, they're speedy, and that's kind of the same thing. But they're quick with their body. I mean, they can move around quick when avoiding tackles, not just straight 100-yard dash run, which Tez can do both. Um, so those are kind of just my general risers of the Senior Bowl. Obviously, we're going to see a lot more when the combine is out. I'm going to do a whole breakdown with a few other people, a few pretty passionate NFL fans to say the least. But let's look into my first round mock draft of February 5th. Yesterday I posted this, or 2 days ago, maybe it was the 4th. But anyways, let's just take a look at this a little bit. I'm not gonna read off everything because that's stupid. But just kind of looking, obviously, I have Travis Hunter going one. I don't think he's the best prospect in this class, not by a long, no, not by a long shot. He's top five, top three. I'd say top five. Um, but I have him going one. I don't think it's surprising. I'm just gonna go over the top few of these picks, just the things that stand out, and then I'll move on to some college basketball because obviously that's what season we're in. He's a great prospect. The Titans have said they're gonna take a generational talent. Unless they're throwing a smokescreen, which I wouldn't be surprised. There's no clear number one in this draft. Then I think they're going to take Travis Hunter. I mean, he's pretty widely regarded as generational talent, all sorts of that stuff. So I think he'll go one. Number two is the guy who I think is the best overall prospect in this entire class, Abdul Carter. He's really risen up just this entire year. Obviously, that Penn State, that number 11 defensive lineman, you got Micah Parsons, who he followed. Penn State makes great defensive linemen, or defensive edge rushers, I should say. And he moved obviously from kind of like an outside linebacker to really just a pure edge rusher. He's a little small for the edge rushing position, but he's incredible. His hand movements, he does everything right on the defensive line. And it's a little too perfect for Cleveland. I mean, they're trying to ship out Myles Garrett right now. You get rid of one generational defensive lineman, you bring in another. I'm not saying he's generational, but he's phenomenal prospect, and it makes the most sense. Just it purely makes the most sense. Um, so yeah, and then I'll just skip over a few things. I have Tyler Warren going 9 right now. This could all change. I could see him going further, but I have Tyler Warren right now going 9 to the Saints because I think the Saints, they use Taysom Hill obviously a lot in interesting packages, and Warren did a lot of that at Penn State. He really, I mean, as I mentioned, USC, he had 17 receptions for 224 yards and a touchdown against USC when Penn State came to the Coliseum, the LA Coliseum. But he played in every single position basically. He played out wide. He would play in the slot. He lined up at under center. He would throw. He is that Taysom Hill prototype who I think the Saints could really use in that offense. They need a lot of things, don't get me wrong, but I think that makes a lot of sense. You get a guy who fits that Taysom Hill system, and I think they could use him really effectively. Another guy, I'm going to talk about picks 10 and 12 here. I have the Chicago Bears taking Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas, the offensive lineman, and then the Cowboys subsequently take Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. I'm a big Ashton Jeanty fan. I think that's been pretty portrayed. In my opinion, he's a top five prospect in this class. He's maybe top three. He's just a really solid player. He doesn't really fit any of these other places where it would make sense to take him. The Bears would be the first one where I think it would make sense for them to take him. However, they need help on the offensive line so badly that, in my opinion, you just take the best overall offensive line prospect, and that's Calvin Banks Jr. You have to protect your quarterback as much as I think they'd like to get Genty and get this generational running back. You have to protect the quarterback. You have to protect Caleb Williams. He's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year. Granted, some of it was his fault. He holds onto the ball too long, but you got to get no lineman. You got to protect him more, like regardless of him holding the ball. And then Genty, I think obviously the 49ers aren't going to take him. I mean, he would work really well with that. Anyone can run in that system, but but they have McCaffrey still. Who knows how that'll go? But they have McCaffrey. They're not taking him. The Cowboys, however, need a running back. No one really popped out on the screen for Dallas this year. I mean, Rico Dowdle kind of did towards the end of the year, but I don't think he's an RB1. I mean, they've been going through this where, Elliott stopped being productive, and then Tony Pollard was pretty good off as the second string running back, and then he wasn't very good as a starter. Now he's in Tennessee. Then you got Rico Dowdle, who's the second string running back, and he was pretty good. Now you bring him in as a starter, and he's not that good. I think it makes the most sense. You go out and get Ashton Jeanty, just plain and simple. I think it's really that easy, just in my opinion. Um, Two more picks I'm going to talk about here. I think that so I have the Bengals at 17 taking Luther Bird in the third, and I have the Denver Broncos taking Emeka Egbuka. These two picks really matter on free agency, which is why I'll make another mock draft right before the draft after free agency, because obviously T. Higgins with the Bengals, you never know what's going to happen there. So it seems kind of like he's going to leave, go somewhere else. If he leaves, they should, in my opinion, take Colson Loveland from Michigan, tight end, or they should grab Luther Burden, who, in my mind, could be a top 10 pick, but I think will probably slide just because there are better prospects who fit the teams better. So I think he'll go 17, the Bengals, pair him up with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. I think that'll work really well. And then at 20, I have the Broncos taking Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Another great prospect. Obviously, he really struggled with Kyle McCord. Excuse me. But I mean, yeah, everyone struggled with Kyle McCord last year. Not to say anything bad about Kyle McCord. I'll probably talk about him later in the year and how he's probably a decent day three, maybe like day two, day three pick. Um, Anyways, Ibuka I think makes a lot of sense for the Broncos because they don't really have a solid wide receiver too. They have Troy Franklin, they have Marvin Mims, and neither of them have really solidified themselves as like a solid, consistent guy who will make catches when needed. Obviously, you have Cortland Sutton at one, but Bo Nix needs another guy to throw to. And you get Ibuka, he can play out of the slot, he can play out wide. He's a pretty decent, he can run a little jet sweep. He's a pretty versatile wide receiver, and I think you pair him up with Cortland Sutton, it'll really open up Bo Nix's game. And obviously, Bo Nix, I mean, a pretty big proprietor, not a great deep ball thrower. He does. When he does throw deep, he's pretty decent. But he throws behind the line so often that it's so inconsistent, so not good enough. So I get Ibuka and just you get another wide receiver. You get another wide receiver for your second year quarterback. I think it opens it up for Cortland Sutton. plain and simple. And then the last two I think I'm going to talk about here. No, it's just last one. I want to talk about the last one. I think the Vikings will take Amarion Hampton from North Carolina, excuse me, the running back. This is a stacked running back class where it's very possible a bunch of these guys go day two, second round, second, third round. But I think the Vikings let Aaron Jones walk in free agency, and then maybe they'll wait till the second round because there'll be plenty of guys. I mean, you got Cam Skattebo, Dylan Sampson, plenty of guys who they can draft. But I think it makes sense for the Vikings to draft Amarion Hampton and just you feel that you get another young player in your offense, help JJ McCarthy out as much as possible. Because I think that's where they're trending at this point. I think they're going to let Sam Darnold walk in free agency, and you just let JJ McCarthy go. Excuse me, you don't let him go. You let him throw. Um, and you get Hampton, a great weapon out of North Carolina, one of the leading rushers in the country this year. I really think it's that simple. That being said, I think I'm going to move on to some college basketball. College basketball. Let's talk about a few things, a couple things. For starters, Iowa State. Ooh, yikes! Bad prediction. I said they were a Final Four team. I said that they were one of the best teams in the country. Ooh, yikes! They've lost. I want to say three or four, maybe four or five. Their defense is still fantastic. They are not getting anything going offensively. They could not score the basketball against Kansas. And Kansas for some reason is a very confusing team because they kind of just wake up sometimes and remember, oh yeah, we're Kansas basketball. But they back to back put up stinkers against the Sunflower State, which Kansas, of course. They lost 80-61 to Kansas State and then 52-69 to Kansas. Yikes. Those are just offensive stinkers. I don't know what to say other than that. It's just you can't. And of course, the week before they lost to Arizona on that heartbreaking. They didn't lose on this, but Caleb Love, half court, not even half court, three quarters court, ties the game, sends it to overtime. Wildcats win it. Um, yeah, Iowa State's on a turn, and this it's my fault. Hand up. That was my fault. Any prediction I make on them, it's not good. Anytime I make a prediction about that. So Iowa State fans, Cyclone fans, I apologize. That was on me. You can direct your hate towards Terrence Holton, so I apologize for that. Um, but moving on to some teams I actually do like, and you know what? I'm probably gonna curse them, so this is on me. But some teams I do like. Both wear red, both wear white and black. Both wear red, white, and black. Do you see where I'm going with this? No, of course you don't. But let's start off with the Texas Tech Raiders. Oh boy, this team is peaking at the right time. Just picked up two pretty big wins, beat Baylor 73-59. A couple days before, 82-81 over Houston. That was an incredible game for them. They overcame so much. They had their best player, JT Toppin, ejected on an egregious double technical, excuse me, where I don't remember exactly. No, I remember exactly what he did. I believe he shot a three, or someone else. Oh, I'm forgetting who did what. But I believe he shot a three. He kicked out his leg, and they called it like an offensive foul, which fair enough. You can call it an offensive foul. And then they called it a double technical and kicked him out. And then if I'm not mistaken, because I missed this part of the game, I apologize. Their head coach also got kicked out for rightfully complaining about it. Regardless, they pulled off a huge win in Houston, winning at the number 6 team in the country in overtime. It's no easy feat whatsoever. I've talked about how great Houston is. They're a phenomenal defensive team. One of my favorite things about this team, I love this, and maybe I shouldn't because I'll fall in love with this because these teams can get burned easily. But Texas Tech can shoot the ball. They can shoot the three real well. And in March, with teams, you're trying to move towards teams shooting the three more. In March, shooting the three is important. It's really important. And if your team is shooting 38% from three, like they are, their best player, Chance McMillan, point guard, he's averaging 45% from three. That's a good start. That's a damn good start. That's all I have to say. That's a championship. Like I'm not saying they're going to win the championship, but that is Final Four. That is Elite Eight. That is finals level potential. If you can hit the three, what the number one thing college kids do, this applies to kickers, this applies to basketball players. The number one thing they do, can you guess what it is? They miss. That is just the genuine fact about it. There's obviously a select few teams who don't, but they miss. These teams miss. So you couple that with also JT Toppin averaging 15 and 8, one of the best just overall forwards in college basketball. I mean, this team is good. They're really good. They're rolling at the right time. They're 18 and 4, currently third in the Big 12, but they're moving on that. They have, oh my goodness, I'm just like reading along their schedule. They have won 8 of their last 9. They're hitting their stride at the right time when you want to make a push to try and move up in your conference tournament, show teams that or show the committee that you can get these great wins. So they're making a move at the right time. That's all I got to say about that. Second team I want to talk about, the St. John's Red Storm. Oh boy, Rick Pitino's team. Oh my goodness. They are complete opposite of Texas Tech. They cannot shoot the three whatsoever. I'm not going to say they're complete opposite of this, but they cannot shoot the three whatsoever, but they bully you. They play bully basketball. They played Marquette a few days ago. They I believe there was their entire starting lineup, I know, had at least 4 fouls by the end of the game. They pulled out a close one against a good Marquette team, great Marquette team, and their entire team had fouls, had 4 fouls going into the end. Pull it out. It just shows Rick Pitino. It takes him a year, but he gets his teams moving. They play bully basketball. They play great defense. They score inside. They do everything that you would expect out of a Rick Pitino coach team, and it's really. I don't want to say it's refreshing because I like shoot the teams that shoot the three, but it is really fun to watch when a team is just bullying their opponent into like submission with like going down low. They're getting the rebounds. They're doing all of it. I mean, it's fun, and I like Rick Pitino for it. It's great. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I really love their style of basketball. They're easily the best team in the Big East right now. Got a big one against UConn later this weekend. Um, and it'll be a test for sure. But they are St. John's is one of, if not the best teams in the country right now. I mean, I don't know what to say about it. They're 20 and 3. They've already surpassed their win total. I believe this is the most wins they've had. It's like the quickest they've reached 20 wins in I want to say 30 years, 40, maybe longer. Um, it's enlightening, especially a close family friend who are St. John's fans. And that's if my team sucks, which USC does, it's fun to watch. It's fun to see when you got some friends who are not Oregon or UCLA. I hate them. But never mind. But anyways, St. John's, great team. That's another team. The two things I look for in Final Four contenders are teams that can shoot the ball from three and teams that play defense. Texas Tech can shoot the three. St. John's plays defense. That is what I want to see. I want teams who can defend, teams who will bully you off the basketball, and teams who, when they need to, when the going gets tough, will hit the three and will punish you for not guarding them closely outside. So those are easily Final Four contenders, in my opinion, St. John's and Texas Tech. Now, as I said about Iowa State, they'll probably fall off a cliff right after this. So sorry, St. John's and Texas Tech fans. Excuse me. So that's mostly going to round it out. We're going to talk a little bit. There was a lot of upsets last weekend. For starters, my USC Trojans knocked off the number 7, now number 9, Michigan State Spartans. That was their first loss since November 26th. So that was fantastic. That was a really fun watch. I was in the student section, rooting for that. That was awesome. It was, yeah, no, that was a great experience. Watching Eric Musselman. This is not the year for USC. I talked about this last week with Julian. This is not the year. Next year. Next year they're going to be fun. So yeah, it was a great game. Let's talk about some other upsets though. How about Coach Cal in Arkansas walking into Rupp Arena, knocking off, he was heavily booed, him and a bunch of his team heavily booed, knock off number 14 Kentucky. Or maybe they're like 8 or something by then. But do it without their best player in Boogie Fland. I mean, Coach Cal, he still owns that arena, no matter what team he's on. So Kentucky is an interesting team because, and I'll talk about this more in depth when we get closer to March, and I'll talk a little bit about the conferences. Kentucky, this is somehow a consistent thing, no matter the coach. They cannot defend the basketball, like whatsoever. And it's a little bit disheartening. I mean, that's what keeps getting them burned. That's why they can't seem to make it out of the first round in all these games. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to compare the coaches. Um, but yeah, I mean Mark Pope to John Calipari, it's really different. But these guys can't defend, and that's an issue. That's always going to be an issue. So that's like I just mentioned. I like St. John's and I like Texas Tech, or like more specifically St. John's. Don't really like Kentucky because they can't defend. I like teams who play defensive basketball. Maybe it's because I couldn't defend back when I played in high school, but I love teams who can defend. Just two other games. We're gonna briefly talk about two other games. North Carolina gets the tar beaten out of them by Duke in Cameron Indoor Arena. I mean, whoa, that was a whooping. I mean, they made it kind of close towards the end, but that was not close even a little bit. I mean, yeah, it just wasn't like not at all. I mean, North Carolina, they outscored them in the second half. Who cares? Duke put their bums in by the end. And you're not a bum if you go to Duke, but they killed them. There's nothing. Con Nipple and Cooper Flag, they destroyed them. I don't know what to say other than that. I mean, like North Carolina, they have to seriously start thinking about firing Hubert Davis because obviously they went to the Final Four a few years ago. It was kind of a fluke though. They were the eighth seed and just got hot at the right time, which fair enough. But then next year they probably should have been the best team in the country, and they're terrible. They didn't make it last year. And it's the same thing this year. It's the exact same thing this year. They should have been really good this year, and they're not. They returned a bunch of guys. They're just not good. So they should probably fire Hubert Davis, in my opinion. It really all that matters to these people is if they win the rivalry game. So we'll see about Duke, and we'll see about the next time they match up. Who knows? Maybe they can make a Cinderella run to the tournament, but I don't see it happening, just personally. And then lastly, Duke and I just said Duke, UConn and yeah, UConn and Marquette. This will be the last one I talk about. Um, Marquette has now lost two in a row. They're 18 and 4. They're a good team. Don't get me. Let me make that very clear. They're a good team, but they're just not the top dogs like ever. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I just can't see a Shaka Smart team. He did this at Texas too. I mean, they don't perform well towards the end, and it's troubling because they should. They really should. So we'll see about them. I don't know. Like I've said, St. John's is my favorite team in the Big East right now. But UConn, I'm going to talk about UConn because that is a positive. Um, they always seem to hit their stride. They are hitting their stride at the right time, as any Danny Hurley teams or Dan Hurley teams do. It's confusing Dan and Bobby there for a second, but they play better on every single year. They play better on defense and they shoot the ball better when it comes close to March. That's just how they are. That's exactly what's happening. So this is a big one. This is a big game in the Big East coming up on Saturday between UConn and St. John's. So I'm really excited for it. It's gonna be awesome. But just talking about, I mean, first off, I have to mention Solo Ball, one of the best players for UConn, all-time name, maybe top three name in college basketball, if not the world right now. And I mentioned him because he had 25 and 11 versus the Golden Eagles. You can't not talk about a guy who had 25 and 11 and his name Solo Ball. That's fucking electric. Um, yeah, he played fantastic though. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say about UConn. I'm not going to count them out. I never will. I will never count out those Dan Hurley teams. Um, yeah, no, that's all I have for them. And okay, really quickly, I'm going to mention because Maryland got knocked off by Ohio State today, number 18 Maryland. Um, I have no idea what to think about Ohio State. I really don't because they're an interesting team because earlier in the year they lost by 30 to Auburn, and Auburn's one of the best teams in the country, but they lost by 30. And they're on the tournament bubble right now, I believe. I believe they're last I checked in Joe Lenardi's bracketology, they were one of the last four in. Um, but they're getting good wins though. They played bad early in the year, getting good wins though. I mean, you look, Bruce Thornton had 31 tonight against the Terrapins. Um, so we'll see how they really evolve closer to March, whether they fall apart in the Big Ten or not. But that's an interesting bubble team. I'll talk about bubble teams when we get closer to March. It's way too hard to predict right now. I mean, Joe Lunardi had USC in as a bubble team on Tuesday. They lose to Northwestern later that night. What are you going to do? I mean, both teams had their best players out. Not Northwestern. Nick Martinelli, one of the best players in the country. But I'm rambling at this point. That is going to do it for this little impromptu episode just because I don't have a lot more time. Thank you for tuning in. Terrence Holton, have a good one.